I have about a million more questions along this line of thinking, but I've got a caller on the line that I think has a question that is right up your alley. So I'm going to go ahead and jump on with James.
Yep.
Hey, James, you are on the air.
Hey, I've been watching the show maybe 3 or 4 times already, and I've got kind of an issue. I'm married, and I'm watching pornography, and I feel like, because I think it goes really well with this whole cuckolding fantasy thing, is I feel like when I'm watching pornography that when I'm watching 2 people having sex, and the girl I'm attracted to and another guy having sex with that girl, is that I'm by nature of that whole thing, that I'm in the cuckolding position as watching the pornography itself. And so I think it's like rewiring my brain to where I'm thinking, I think it's affecting me that way, and so I'm kind of nervous.
I guess, yeah, no, I hear that. I guess I just want to clarify. I'm yet to hear a problem so far. Is there? I'm not saying if this is causing you distress, then we'll talk about it. But what is this causing an issue? I need some help.
How can I stop? Because it's kind of I kind of want to stop viewing the pornography. Mm-hmm. Because the way it's affecting me, and because I think I'm going to be a better husband, without that kind of thing around. And so I was wanting to know if Dr. Lay had any advice on how to quit pornography.
I think you asked the very best person that question. Dr. Lay, let me give it to you.
So can you guys hear me? Because I know the phone system's a little weird.
Yeah, I think we've got that figured out.
You're good.
Okay. So I really support men who want to be mindful about their sexuality, who really want to look at how to be conscious about how to integrate their sexuality into their lives and be responsible and ethical in that way. I actually have a book that your viewer might really enjoy. It's called Ethical Porn for Dicks, A Man's Guide to Responsible Viewing Pleasure. And in it, I talk about these kinds of issues, about the guys that feel like they're watching too much pornography, about the guys that, feel like they want their wife to act like the porn stars, or even they're struggling because they feel like they get turned on more watching pornography than with their wife. What I recommend, instead of trying to stop the pornography, because we as human beings are actually not really very good at trying to stop doing something, but we are pretty good at trying to change our behavior or at trying to increase other behaviors. So what I ask guys to do is, instead of trying to stop pornography, tell me what kinds of things you feel like you would be doing instead of watching pornography. Well, I'd be going on walks with my wife. I'd be spending more romantic time with my wife. I'd be talking to my wife more. And I ask the guys then, let's pay attention to that stuff. And we even can chart it out, perhaps. Sometimes I have worked with guys and I've said, okay, look, what if you only watch pornography 1 time for every 3 times you have sex with your wife? And so it's not that we are trying to completely stop or eradicate a certain behavior, but we're just trying to shift our attention and our energy towards the things we want more of. The other thing, though, that is really common in couples is that, there are men like your caller who feel like they are watching more porn and they're having less sex with their wife. Causality is an interesting issue here, because what the research shows is that typically what happens is that the couple stops having sex as frequently, or that the couple's sexuality changes, and then the husband goes to pornography, which is a vehicle for masturbation. We have to be very, very clear about that. Pornography is nothing more and nothing less than a tool to enhance masturbation in men. And so the man goes to pornography to masturbate more, to compensate for changes in the sexuality with the partner. So I encourage, again, before we start demonizing and blaming pornography for these issues, let us look at the context within which, this behavior is occurring, because, the system is really a big factor here that we have to pay attention to. So we need to look at how your caller is having sex with his wife, how frequently that sex is happening, how satisfying that sex is happening. Sometimes we can explore that we would be afraid to explore or share with our partner, because pornography doesn't judge us. Pornography is easy to turn on. To get the internet to have sex with you, all you need to do is push the button. It's a little more complicated when we're dealing with real people.
Well, and I love the idea that you pointed out of not trying to decrease the pornography, but putting a ratio to, having intercourse or having a relationship with your wife, because I think oftentimes we won't actually see the porn go down, but we will see the interactions with the wife go up. So often we think of our sexuality as being limited, and yeah, there is the tyranny of hydraulics. There is a certain number of erections and orgasms that most men are able to achieve, but I think most men would be pretty surprised at what they'd be able to accomplish if they had that kind of ratio or had that kind of incentive.
Yeah, for sure. Do we want to get James back on the line to maybe see what he's thinking about this?
Yeah, James, we should be able to hear you.
Oh, yes. Oh, good.
Yeah.
You are on the line.
Sorry,
Perfect.
I've been listening. Yeah. So I kind of get from that is I kind of should, maybe if I have my wife, have her permission to, not masturbate without her permission. Would that help? That way it's she's in complete control and I wouldn't have that whole, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I hear that, and I'll certainly let y'all respond, but to me, that still feels tied to a sense of shame or a sense of this idea of being maybe addicted to pornography or to masturbation, being unable to stop yourself.
I'm trying to eliminate the arousal from pornography so that my wife arouses me more. Because he kind of said, try to use it as an arousal tool. But I'm trying to think if I don't get aroused by 1610s on all my favorite videos, my wife might, if they're always arousing me, then my wife, who, she's very beautiful, but, not 1610s like I'm a sultan, so maybe that's the whole reason why I try to want to cut out the pornography altogether, is so that my wife arouses me more. And then I'm more satisfied that way.
I feel like...
I don't know. It's just... Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that... I feel like that might run the risk of that... It might work for a while, but I feel like that would quickly turn into resentment. And why aren't you letting me? And I have to go to ask for permission now. And it might complicate things more.
That was an example of I go to permission, basically saying I don't want to do that without somebody else, except so if I'm in pornography, I'm in the basement, just doing my thing, and my wife's up, in the bedroom reading a book, and it's it just seems like there's a better way. I think, I don't know. I try to go to therapists, and they say the same thing, there's nothing wrong. But I feel like there is. I don't know. That's why I'm trying to ask if you guys have any advice on this whole kind of situation.
Yeah, Dr. Late, let me give you a chance to respond.
So it's interesting how this kind of, connects to cuckolding in a way. There is a practice called female-led relationships, where men give their wife or a female dominant complete control of the male sexuality, and in some cases, the man even puts on a cage, a cock cage, so that he literally can't masturbate without her permission. One of the wild things is that some of those devices are like Bluetooth and internet enabled, so that your online dominant can unlock them remotely or lock them remotely. It's really kind of wild. I am not, however, suggesting that is the answer here. Instead, what I really think would be interesting is if you sat down with your wife and asked her what she finds sexually interesting. I gotta say, it sounds like you are really, really focused on your sexual interest, your sexual arousal, your sexual experience, and I wonder what her interests are and how connected you are with that, because I bet that it would be a pretty arousing, erotic, and exciting experience for you and her if you asked her what her sexual fantasy is. Not a lot of women have the opportunity or permission to kind of express that or to share that. Men, because of male kind of sexual privilege, we have a lot more permission to kind of identify what we're interested in. 16 perfect tens, like you said. What is she interested in, and what would it be like for you to sit down with her and explore her fantasy? Or even, what kind of pornography does she watch? Or what kind of erotica does she read? And what would it be like to share that with her? Instead of trying to, instead of trying to suppress or stop or turn off your interest in pornography, let's try and turn up the dial on your interest in your wife's sexuality. Let's incentivize and empower that.
So I hope that gives you a place to start. I would definitely recommend some of Dr. Lay's books on these topics as you're kind of working through these things. And again, talking to a sex therapist who is going to be understanding of these kinds of issues and give you a more complex answer than, well, porn is fine or porn is evil, and, brushing it off from there.
Yeah, well, I try to go to religious therapists, because they're really against pornography. So I thought maybe that would help, and it didn't help at all. So
yeah, I can't say that I'm shocked, but okay, you get what you ask for sometimes. So.
Well, then I go to a secular therapist, and they tell me the exact opposite. And so, my urge to stop pornography is not coming from a religious, point of view. It's coming from, I think it would, make my wife happier and all that kind of stuff. So I guess I really need to, think this through.
Well, it very well may, but just, I guess, to wrap it all up, I would suggest that the problem here isn't the pornography. The problem here is the connection with your wife, whether that's her interest in sex, whether that's her level of arousal, or whether that's just your ability or interest or efforts in eliciting that arousal and creating that connection and developing that relationship with her. So I would really encourage you to focus more on the sex with her rather than the not. Like Dr. Lay said, staying away from trying to avoid things and instead running towards something.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But I
Very
certainly,
good.
I certainly hope that helps, and I really appreciate you giving us a call.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Thank
take care.
I'll just kind of comment there that, your caller is right that there is kind of a divide here between religious therapists and secular therapists around sexuality. And we have to acknowledge how morally complex sexuality is, because most of our kind of socio-sexual rules come from, a history of morals that emerged from religion. And one of the places that we are now trying to turn things is by moving from what we call an act-based model of sexual health to a values-based model of sexual health. And, an act-based model of sexual health is really the religious kind of tradition that, sex outside marriage is bad, sex inside marriage is good. Penis and vagina sex is good, penis anywhere else sex is bad. That, heterosex is good, homosex is bad. These are act-based models of sexual health where the goodness of sex is defined on what you do. Instead, now we are realizing with the diversity of sexual expression that is out there, we're now realizing that it's not so much what you do, but it's more how you do it. And so the therapists and the clinicians and the thinkers that I'm really interested in. And this even includes religious folks. There is a group called the Religious Institute, which is a consortium of pastors and ministers who recognize that religion has not done a good job with sexuality, and they are trying to do better. They actually come to some of my trainings, which I'm, really kind of conflicted by. I enjoy them being there, but I always worry because I'm not a super religious guy. But instead, we are now starting to focus on how you do it. And so then the question is, well, what are the components that go into healthy sexuality? And, right now, there is some consensus that healthy sexuality is sex that is honest, sex that is mutual, sex that is, safe in terms of attention to STIs and such, sex that doesn't involve exploitation, and sex that has some kind of integrity to it, so that we can have honest, shared value kind of sex, even if it is really super kinky, and it's healthy so long as we do so in a consensual, open, negotiated kind of way. The story I often tell is, if I'm at a hotel and I meet you at a hotel bar and we go, and I tell you, gee, I'm really looking for a long-term relationship and you seem like a wonderful person and we really are hitting it off and I'd love to try to have a long-term relationship with you. We go up to my hotel room, we have crazy hot sex. There's orgasms everywhere on the ceiling and splattered on the walls. But the next day, I don't call you because I knew you wanted a long-term relationship and I didn't. That might have been very, very pleasurable sex. It might be very, quote, good sex, but it wasn't healthy sex because I wasn't being honest and we didn't have shared values kind of going into this. Was it really even consensual, one might argue? Instead of trying to focus on what we do, let us focus instead on how we do it. And instead of trying to stop the sex, let's try to enhance the degree to which our sexual behaviors can be honest. And the term I talk about often is having sexual integrity. One of the things I really like about, the caller that we were just chatting with is that he is really trying to figure out consciously how to make his sexuality a part of himself and his identity in a way that he wants it to be. He's taking charge of his sexuality in his life. And whether I agree with him or not, I am impressed by that because I think it is a very existentially authentic thing to do.